Hey, ladies, welcome here. Thank you for joining us for another Fearless Friday. My name is Meg Heppner, and I am your Happy Healthy Woman branch director out in South Surrey, British Columbia. I am also a life coach and a hypnotherapist. And today I am so lucky to have with me our new trailblazer down here in South Surrey. Whitney Coupland is with us. Whitney, welcome here. This is your first Fearless Friday. I'm so excited that you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my first Fearless Friday. I joined this year, January 1st. I became a trailblazer, and it's been a great experience so far. I've had a couple of interviews and done a couple of workshops, and it's been super fun. I'm also a coach, but I work more on the health side of things. So I work with the autoimmune community primarily. And my reason for joining Happy Healthy Women is to educate all women out there about the potential to heal naturally from autoimmune conditions or chronic illness. So beyond meeting lots of lovely women at coffee dates and that kind of thing, my overall main purpose of being here is to be the light at the end of the tunnel for people who have been struggling with symptoms, whether those are digestive or brain fog or lack of energy or chronic skin ailments, to say there is something that can be done here and there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, my word. Like, what a precious gift that is to people because for anyone that has ever been in that situation where they've had long-term symptoms and they don't really know what to do with them, or they've been to the doctor and they've seen everyone they thought was going to help them, and everyone just kind of goes, don't really know, don't really know. Maybe you'll have to live with this. This message of, wait, there's something you can do is just like such a balm to the soul, if you know
Yeah.
what I mean. So I love that you offer that to people. I also love the way that you do it because it's such an emotional type of state, right? Like if I'm ever dealing with a health issue, I'm normally pretty emotional about it. You really have this ability to just calm it down and be like, well, let's look at the facts. Let's look at how everything is working together. And so I love that you bring that energy to it, which actually brings me to something that I wanted to talk about today, which is this idea of how our mind and our body are connected, right? The
Mhm.
things that are happening in our head are so connected to the things that are happening in our body. And often we don't realize that. So, my question for you, and something I'd love to learn more about, is that mind body connection and how your mindset affects what your body does. You must have an amazing amount of experience with this.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I mean, my journey started with Raynaud's when I was only 12 years old. That is where your extremities become really cold when they shouldn't, and you lose circulation really quickly. And I grew up in Ontario, and there's really long, snowy winters. And I remember wishing the time away, like, when is it going to be spring? When is it going to be spring? And then more recently, in my early 30s, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And that is what really propelled me. Although I had been a nutritionist for 10 years, this threw me into the direction of autoimmune disease. Because in my meetings with doctors and even naturopaths, I didn't get my questions answered in a way that I wanted
Mhm.
them answered. And I didn't leave feeling really good about the recommendations. And it didn't sit well with me. And I didn't really have anybody to talk with about it. And I didn't really know anybody on a similar path. So that's where I was like, there's definitely a gap in between the doctors and all the helpers out there and the person who's struggling. And perhaps I can be a liaison to help people there. And that mindset component is what I was missing at the beginning of my journey. And I saw this in my work, my one-on-one work with clients years ago. And I thought, I have all this information for them on nutrition and health and lifestyle. And we're sitting down and we're talking about it and we're setting goals and they're taking information away. And then they're not coming back with results. What
Hmm.
is what's the bridge here? What's missing? And it turns out that it's mindset. And I had considered going back to school for a psychology degree because I thought I can't help people make changes in their life at like the body level unless we address what's happening in the mind. And with
Yeah.
autoimmune disease, I think it starts with a couple of things. One of them is your self-concept as somebody with chronic illness, and waking up in the morning and not telling yourself that you are your illness, but being able to see beyond that. And then two, starting with the belief, the genuine belief that healing is possible,
Mm.
despite potentially being told that this is chronic and lifelong and can only be managed to a certain extent, to go beyond that. And that all starts with the mind.
I think I think that's so incredible because for the last like 3 years, I've had tummy issues. Let's just call it that, tummy issues.
Mhm.
And it's such an interesting thing because I've been to doctor to doctor to doctor, all over the place. And what happens to my mindset as I'm working with, trying to heal my body, trying to get good, gut biome, all this kind of stuff is really, really fascinating. And it's been amazing because when you walk into an office and you share, they ask you about your physical symptoms and you're like, okay, this. But it's when I get back into the car with my husband that I start to like get emotional and go, what happens if I'm going to always have this? What happens if this never goes away? What happens if I can't eat the way I want to eat for the rest of my life? And then the panic sets in, right? Like almost this like just uncomfortable, panicky feeling. And if I didn't have someone to bounce those ideas off and to share that with, right, I'd really be shoving that down back into my gut and just
Yeah.
making my issue worse, right? And so I
Yeah.
love the fact that you're going like, do you know you are someone outside of your illness? And do you know that no matter what anyone has told you, that there is a hope for you, that there's a journey for you, and that if you're willing to go on it, there could be a beautiful result at the end. And to keep that courage going inside of a person, I think that's just absolutely extraordinary.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I just thought of the moment that I left the naturopathic clinic when I went for my food sensitivity results. And there were at least 30 foods on there that the doctor said, you should avoid these for either 3, 6, or 12 months. And she gave me a generic plan that she had crossed things out with and written little notes. And she said, yep, here you go. And she sent me on my way. And I walked around the block 4 or 5 times that day, I think, just trying to let it sink in, because everything that I had been eating was showing up as a food sensitivity. And that's leaky gut because, the food particles get into your bloodstream and then you start having these reactions and they're all showing up on this blood test. And so you have to go to all these foods that you haven't been eating. So you're completely flipping your diet around. And at the time I had, how old was my son? A few months old. So I had a toddler and almost a newborn. And I was going to be taking this on. And with the nutritional background, I was like, I can totally take this on. But that's the practical side of things. What about the mindset? What about the support? That's what was
Yeah.
missing.
Well, and we often don't think about this, but food is a very emotional thing
Mhm.
because we eat food not just for our nourishment, but we also eat food for entertainment. We eat food for community. We eat food to create bonds between people, right? Like if you've ever been out with a group of girlfriends and someone goes, "Let's share a dessert," and all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're the person that goes, "I can't."
Mhm.
It when you look at it logically, it's no big deal. So what? You can't eat that dessert. But when you're in that moment, there's something about it that just goes, right? You realize you're kind of missing out on that experience. Or I know like for myself, we were invited out to, to friends' places and they were going to barbecue. And I'd always say, well, I can't eat any of that. So I have to bring my own, I have to bring my own food or whatever. And then I'd sit there eating my food and I kind of feel like, oh, this feels so awful, because you realize that the food is meant to connect you with people. It's not just meant for nourishment. And I was sitting there eating just for nourishment. So it felt weird. But nobody really talks about that. That's just something that, you're supposed to naturally be able to get over. And yet, for most of us, we have a huge emotional attachment to the foods that we eat and the type of foods that we eat.
Yeah. And so since this is called Fearless Friday, I'll address what I think are the main fears that come up in my clients. So the first one is the fear of taking a look at your health, because you never know what can of worms you're opening up when you start to, see different doctors and get different testing done. And that might seem like the biggest one, but it's not. It's what comes afterwards. It's making the changes. And so it's a fear of giving up everyday comforts and everyday luxuries, and fears of being different and not being able to fit in with the crowd. Like you said, participating at a barbecue, eating with your girlfriends at a restaurant. And these are all things that I have experienced personally. And a lot of restaurants, well, maybe COVID has changed things a little bit, but a lot of them were like platters. It was like go in with a group of 8, and then we're just going to serve you all these platters and everybody's going to share everything. So it's not even like you could go in and say, hey, I need all these modifications. But I was able to speak this year at the AIP Summit. So that's the Autoimmune Protocol Summit earlier in January. And I spoke specifically on socializing while on this autoimmune diet. And I came up with the PrEP method. So it's prepare, reflect, expect, party. So preparing is like the food. So if you're going to a barbecue, are you bringing a side dish with you that you can have, or something to throw on the barbecue that you can have? And in that preparing, you would speak to a host and say, hey, like 1-to-1, like, let's not make a big deal about this. I'm going to bring a plain chicken breast, throw it on the barbecue with the burgers. No sweat. I'm bringing a side dish. I know I can have it. No pressure on you. I'm taking care of my own needs. Yeah. The reflect is to reflect on your feelings. Like, how have I felt in past situations like this? How do I feel now about this upcoming situation? And not sweeping those feelings under the rug. Acknowledging that you're feeling like you're missing out on something and that you really wish you could have it, and saying, yeah, it does suck. And that's okay. And then the expect is the questions that people are going to ask you. There's going to be people out there, oh, you're eating something different. Why are you eating that? Why don't you want to have any of this? And the expect part is coming up with those answers ahead of time, so that you have these on the fly answers that you use all the time, that you're super comfortable with. And they just flow out so naturally when people ask these questions. And you can even think about different scenarios. Like if you are going out with girlfriends, and think about the dessert menu arriving on the table, and already know that you're going to order a mint tea, and you're not going to make a big deal out of it, because at home you've made, cookies with all the ingredients that you can have. And when you get home, you can sit down and enjoy that. Yeah. And then the party is the focus on things outside of the food scene, the music, the ambiance, socializing with friends, the true meaning of meeting up and being there with other people. So with that method, you can prepare all the different areas, the physical, the mental, emotional, the social, ahead of time.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And what a beautiful way that you've encapsulated it. But like, that is the hardest part sometimes. If you're already emotional about everything, and then you go out and people ask questions, and like, why not? What's going on? And you almost like have to relive all of this turmoil inside of you. And so to be able to have those prepared answers, and to be able to go, well, this is why, and then you can keep yourself in that sort of calm, peaceful state, instead of going back into that maybe anxiety of your, that you have attached to maybe how you're feeling about your autoimmune disease or your symptoms or whatever. I really, really love that. And I think it's beautiful because at one of our Happy Healthy Women coffees, one of the ladies gave this beautiful kind of analogy of something that she did. and this wasn't related to this type of thing, but I think it's so applicable. She said, "Just for today, I will, do this and this. Just for today, I will do this and this." And I love that because when you talk about like you order your mint tea and you go, "Look, at home I have a dessert that I can enjoy," or whatever, and it's that reminder, just for today, I'm not going to partake in this, and it's okay. Instead of going, "I'll never partake again and now I'm an outsider and now everyone's looking at me funny." And you know what I mean? Like it's no, just for today, I will not be eating the dessert. And when I get home, I can have the dessert that's prepared for me, like whatever, right? And it's such a beautiful, calm way to kind of go through the process. So I think that that's just lovely. And I think that that's a beautiful thing where you talk about like the focus on the other things in your life, because when you're struggling with something, it can become very pervasive. It can become like it's everywhere, it's everything. And if you have any type of issue with food, it does honestly feel like it's everywhere. Because everywhere you go, people offer you food and you're constantly having to say no. And so I love this idea of training yourself to go, but look at the beautiful room that I'm in. Look at the beautiful people I'm in communication with. Look at the beautiful music or, whatever, so that it doesn't become this all encompassing, pervasive part of your life.
Yeah, and just to go a bit further with that, when you talk about food being everywhere and being offered food and then sometimes having to say no, no thank you, what are you making that mean about yourself? Or what thoughts are you putting in the other person's mouth, right? We're assuming that they're thinking we're rude or we're picky or we're a princess, but that may not be true at all. And I think the more honest we are about what's going on with us within like our comfort zone, right? Like you don't have to tell them every last detail about what's going on with you, but to just be honest is the best policy. And I love that just for today as well. Something that came to mind when you were talking about that is like if your coworkers or your friends are going out after work, they're going to the bar, or even during the day, your coworkers are going out for a meeting at Starbucks. And you're like, I think I'm just going to pass because I can't have XYZ. But deciding ahead of time, I'm still going to fully participate in my life. I'm still going to go to things that I'm invited to, and using that prep method to make sure that you're prepared ahead of time and you can still enjoy the experience to the best of your ability.
You know what? That leads me to a really interesting question, and I'm fascinated to hear what you say. Um, a person, okay, according to them, whoever the brilliant people are in the world, you only have so and so much willpower. And if you're going to run your life on willpower, you're eventually going to give into temptation, right? Which is why most people fail at the
Yes.
things that they want to do, because they're running on willpower, and your willpower reserve can eventually run out.
Mhm.
And so I'm really interested when people use your method, that's a shift in identity, in who you are, and in ownership of your life experience. And when you do that, my assumption is you can move from willpower, which you eventually fail at,
Mhm.
to this is who I am,
Yeah.
and it's okay. Would you agree, or tell me what you see in that way?
No, that's exactly it. It's taking something out of willpower and having to think about it all the time and making it something automatic. And there's going to be different ways for different people. Like last month, I did a healthy habits workshop, and that was all about creating habits. But if you look at something like the 4 tendencies and getting to know yourself, are you accountable to yourself? Are you accountable to other people? Do you tend to rebel against things that you set for yourself? Do you tend to comply with things? So a lot of my work with clients begins with that self-awareness so that they can set themselves up for success and do what feels good for them. Some people really need external accountability, and some people really resist external accountability. So you have to know yourself, and it might take a bit of trial and error, but I always say, like, if it doesn't feel good, it's not going to be long term. So we need to find a way that this can bring about joy. And doesn't feel like a chore anymore.
I love that, and I'm 100% that person. If somebody else puts a restriction on me, oh, like, no, like, I will self-sabotage just because I'm like, "You're not allowed to put restrictions on me." So it's like, knowing that would be so beneficial,
But how
because
about
my
putting restrictions on yourself? How does
I'm
that
okay with that.
feel?
That I can do. And it's such an interesting thing because my husband is such a health nut. Like my husband, everything health. He loves it. And so he's constantly trying to like get me to do cleanses and get me to, try these different things. And there's always a part of me that's somewhat resistant. And I know it's just because he's like, this is a great idea. But if I came across it, I'd be like, oh, I should do this. And so knowing that about myself also can help me lower that and go like, okay, this is a really good idea, actually. You're just being resistant for the sake of your resistant personality. You can just let that down and give yourself to enjoying what he's offering because he always comes up with these amazing things. And I'm missing out if I let my own self sabotage not let me participate. Right. So, yeah, I love that. Being aware of your own tendencies is just so massively important. So, here's the interesting thing, you have a workshop coming up
Yes.
very shortly. Tell us a little bit about that because the information that you provide for this community is so important. And I know there's women out there right now that are listening that are going, I so fall into that space of not feeling like there's any hope and feeling like this is exactly who I am. And I need someone like Whitney in my life reminding me that a different life is possible. So tell us about this workshop. Tell us when it is and how we can sign up and come.
So there's one coming up next week. It's on February 9th at 10 a.m. And it's basically an introduction to healing from autoimmune disease. So we're going to cover the basics, why it's important to know you have an autoimmune disease or a diagnosis. And then we'll cover very vaguely, we're going to look at diet, lifestyle, mindset, and root causes. And I called it part one because I want to cover diet, lifestyle, mindset, and root causes in further workshops in more detail. So this is going to be the overview so that, we can grab at the low-hanging fruit and start to implement some of the really easy things that can make a difference really quickly. And then depending on your tendency, build on that confidence as you conquer a small step, move on to something bigger.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So if you are someone who suspects you have an autoimmune, thing going on with yourself, or if you're someone who knows, come and see the wisdom that you can find here because there might be, like you said, I love this low hanging fruit that you could make these little changes already that would make a big difference. And then for sure, look out for those other workshops coming down the road where we can dive into it even deeper. I love the fact that you did it that way. And I think that's a fabulous opportunity for people to come to. So that is on Eventbrite for those of you who are looking for how to sign up for that. That is on Eventbrite. That is also on our South Surrey meetup page for Happy Healthy Women. So check that out and come out and see what information you can hear or find that's going to be massively beneficial to you. So Whitney, thank you so much for joining me on Fearless Friday. I am so appreciative of you and what you do in the world and how you walk with people through this process. And I'm so glad you got to join us today.
Thank you so much, guys. And just if you're looking to find me online, it's whitneycoupland.com. All of my social platforms and stuff are there. So that's just one main hub that you can find me if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. We will see you next week. Until then, take good care. Bye, everyone.